All right, Mark Rogers, TV talking Miami football. We do so with Cam Underwood from State of the U. Please join him there for the best in Miami football coverage. Join me for college football coverage overall right here on YouTube. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just want to hear the audio conversations, the full conversations. Stitcher, iTunes, and Podbean. Just search Mark Rogers TV. All right, Cam, I understand you're rested and relaxed and ready to go. I can't imagine that you were worn down and tired delivering what you gave us the last time, so I'm ready for a big discussion tonight.
Yeah, man, just had a little end of summer vacation to get my batteries recharged and things like that. So yeah, let's hop right into it.
So we crank up with the first scrimmage tomorrow, it being Friday night right now. So we're looking at the first Saturday scrimmage here. And anytime there's a quarterback competition, that's the focus of fall practice and specifically these scrimmages, because this is when the guys really get after it.
Yeah, so, there's going to be a couple of scrimmages throughout the course of camp. I think they're scheduled to be 3 scrimmages, and this is the first thereof. So it's going to happen at Hard Rock Stadium tomorrow, August the 12th. It is closed to media and fans. And then directly after that event, the families of the players and staff are all going to have a meal. And then it's going to go straight into Canes Fest, which is the largest fan gathering event. So you can take pictures with your favorite player, get autographs, all those kind of things. So that's afterwards. And we have something up on the website about that, just, stateoftheu.com. and search for Canes Fest, and that'll give you all of your timing needs and scheduling and all those kind of things are already up there. But like I said, before Canes Fest tomorrow at Hard Rock Stadium is going to be the first fall scrimmage. And that's going to be a big one because obviously the first thing that you want to talk about right now is the quarterback battle, because we don't know who the quarterback is going to be. And I think that there are, from all reports and things around, there's basically 3 contenders right now. And you're talking redshirt junior Malik Rozier. He started that 2015 game at Duke, the one with the return by Cornelder for a touchdown at the end. And he played half of that debacle game against Clemson. And he's the only one with any snap experience in games in college. So he has that going for him. Next is redshirt sophomore Evan Shirreffs. Very cerebral guy. I say it all the time that he was this high school's valedictorian because it was true. I heard somebody say that he was Peter Ariz on his podcast actually said that he heard from a source that Evan Shirreffs is being compared to a more mobile Ryan Williams. So not the biggest arm in the world, but he can make all the throws. He's mobile in his accuracy. It's been better than it was, but yeah, that's one of his biggest strengths. And, throwing with anticipation and timing, those kind of things. So that's your second contender. And then you have the franchise, N'Kosi Perry, true freshman out of Ocala Vanguard, 6'4", he's up to about 175 pounds, give or take. Broke all of Dante Culpepper's records at Ocala Vanguard High School, 2015, Mr. Football for his classification in Florida. Had less statistical numbers last year, but that was because they were blowing teams out, so he rarely played into the second half of games. But the kid has everything that you need. He can run, he can throw, he has a cannon for an arm. I compared him to Marcus Mariota in my recruiting notebook on signing day, and I stand by that. So those are your real 3 top contenders for the job so far, in pretty much everyone's estimation, mine included. So we'll see what happens in the scrimmage. Mark Richt has not decided if quarterbacks are going to be live or not. Live quarterbacks in that they can be hit and tackled to the ground just like anybody else, as opposed to the thud or, you tap them and then they're down, but making them live like it's a real game. He has not decided on that. And he said that after practice today, he was undecided, Mark Richt did. And if he does not make quarterbacks live for this scrimmage, he said he does not envision a scenario when he makes them live for subsequent scrimmages, just because you're getting closer and closer to the season. So you don't want, things to happen. And the last time that we had quarterbacks live for a scrimmage in the spring, Jonathan Garvin, as a true freshman, hit Jack Allison so hard he separated his shoulder and then transferred 2 days later. So there's something to be said for not necessarily making the quarterbacks live. But that's going to be the first thing that people are going to look at. How are they operating? There's going to be first-team offense against first-team ones and twos, I think, are going to be facing up against each other. So you really want to see how these guys operate in the huddle, how they get the offense going. Obviously, you got to hit your throws, make your right reads, and be accurate with the football, not turning it over and things like that. So, yeah, and that's the quarterback play is going to impact everything on the field, obviously. The defenses obviously are going against these guys every day in practice, so you know some of their tendencies on where they like to go with the ball. If you have formations that are the same, which obviously we're going to see because this is Miami practice, maybe, okay, if you're lining up, trips left, tight right, you're going to think, okay, cool, they're going to run this route combination because I've seen this 3 days this week. And then maybe a defender is cheating and then makes an interception. Anybody who's played a sport has seen this. When I played basketball, you would do that in practice. Like, we're going to run zipper. The guys on the other side know zipper because they run the same thing. So they're going to go and cheat to try to, maybe make a play. And you stand out, hey, coach, I made a play, whatever. So things like that. But, yeah, it's going to be I think it's going to be tightly contested. The defensive lines are going to be the strength of this team. You could really go 3 deep at pretty much every defensive line position. So that's going to be big. The linebackers want to see what they do. And the defensive backfield is also a thing that people are going to look at. So that's going to be a good matchup between quarterbacks who don't have game experience at this level, really, except for Malik Rozier, versus a rebuilding secondary. Daquan Johnson has played a lot of snaps, but he rarely started, like a handful of times. Sheldrick Redwine transitioning from safety or corner to safety, and he's paired up with Johnson, who was his high school teammate. So we'll see how that tandem works at safety. And then you got D. Delaney, transfer from the Citadel, 2-time FCS All-American. Javante Dean, JUCO transfer, originally went to Homestead South Dade High School down here in South Florida before he went to JUCO. And then, Trajan Bandy, Malik Young, who started some games last year. And like Malik Young has a lot of experience at corner, but those other guys, they're new here. So how does that group come together, especially if you have, just all kinds of different route combinations and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see what the statistics are looking like when they release them after the scrimmage. It'll be interesting to hear how Coach Richt and the other coaches, I think, are going to speak. I know Coach Richt will definitely speak to the media after the scrimmage. I'm not sure any other coaches, but hearing how they speak of things, and then those, sourced reports by pretty much everybody, every beat writer around. They have sources in the athletic department, and they're going to hear things, and they're going to report things that they're hearing, and that's really going to be interesting. So, yeah, I think the focuses for me are going to be quarterbacks and defensive backfield for this scrimmage, and obviously offensive line as well, which I think is going to be better this year because you have guys more in their natural position slots. Casey McDermott at left tackle, Trevor Darling moving inside to left guard, which is more of a natural position for him. Tyler Gauthier starting at center, Navon Donaldson, true freshman at right guard, and Tyree St. Louis at right tackle. I think that group is going to do really well. And then the second line, third line, we'll see how they've developed as well. So on top of that, the last thing, which really should have been the first thing that I said, the most important thing I'm looking forward to right now is a scrimmage without injuries. And that's just a thing that we need, especially at running back. We're paper thin. At tight end, we're thinner than paper thin. Mike Pinckney has been out for a while now with a strained hamstring, one of your 3 starting linebackers from last year. So, yeah, I want to see these guys compete. I want to hear good things, and I want no injuries. And then we can hopefully spin this forward into the 3rd week of practice next week as we get ready towards the season.
Cam, there's so many aspects of the Richt decision about the live quarterback play that intrigue me, and you alluded to many of them. So this is a dilemma for any other football coach, more so than any other sport, because of the injury probability, is that, man, I really want to see and get a read on my team and how physical they are, how physical certain players are, because it's almost not football if you're not going full go to a certain extent and hitting. That's what football is. It's blocking and tackling. But if you can't do that, you've got an idea, you've got a really good idea, but you really want to know about some of those younger players and how they can stand up physically against some of the better players on your team, and you can't necessarily do that. But you don't want to get people injured. Now, if you've got a situation like Brad Kai as your starting quarterback, we know he's the starting quarterback. He's good to go. He just needs his reps. Then you make the decision, we don't want anyone touching Brad Kaya. But if you've got a quarterback competition and let's say 2 of your 3 quarterbacks especially are elusive, but who's really a tougher runner? Who can maybe break a few tackles? When somebody gets a hand on them, they can shake free versus a guy that's just quick and fast. And you want to make some evaluation of that. Well, you can't do it unless they're live. And just to see a little bit of toughness out of these guys getting off the turf a few times. And then in addition to that, as you know and have explained to us a number of times over the past couple of years, the development of the offensive line at Miami has not been as great previously as the front seven has been on defense, and then you expose your playmakers and specifically the quarterback on offense. And then another thing you alluded to was the cheating by the defense. Now, if you get that cheating along the defensive front, maybe they don't quite have the advantage as some secondary guys do in breaking on a ball versus a certain play, but they do get a read on protections, and maybe they have an unfair advantage, and then you leave your quarterback out to dry that way.
Yeah, those are, great points to make. And, we've had, like I said, injuries have happened in live scrimmages. You had Ryan Williams in 2004 year. In the spring, he tore his ACL in a live scrimmage running for a touchdown. Which opened the job up for Brad Kaya, really, because Ryan Williams was probably going to be the starter that year. Like I previously said, you had Jack Allison, who got blasted, separated shoulder, and transferred a couple days later by John Garvin in a live scrimmage. And yeah, I think the main thing is the first point that you brought up about having mobile quarterbacks, because the quarterback run game is going to be, I think, it's going to be a part of this offense now. And you really want to see how that works in a tangible kind of a way. So you're not like just doing the tap down, like, okay, I touch him, and I'm sitting. So like you touch him on his thigh. Okay, cool, you're down. But maybe a guy spins out of that. You've seen this before. Derek Crudup, when he was a sophomore, I want to say, down at Miami, there was a play when he looked like he was swarmed under by about 7 guys in a game, and he scored like a 40-yard touchdown run, because it was a game and it was live. And when you touch him, he wasn't down because he kept moving and squirming and working, and he got out of there. And you want to see, is that something that Malik Rozier and N'Kosi Perry bring to the table? And you kind of have to balance that, is it worth it, to make them live and maybe have somebody get hit where they're injured, and then, it changes the dynamic of the quarterback battle and removes one of those guys from the competition. But of all those things and all the things that you brought up or said that I said, which is crazy because apparently I say a lot of stuff, but those are all great points. But I think the one really debating, if you want to potentially have a guy injured and or seeing what the quarterback run game is going to look like in actual practice, that is the biggest factor of the decision to make the quarterbacks live or not, in my mind.
Cam Underwood, State of the U, joining us to talk Miami football. You can join him there at State of the U for the best in Miami football coverage. Of course, our conversations can be found, the audio versions on iTunes, Podbean, and also Stitcher. Just search Mark Rogers TV or subscribe to my YouTube channel for the video podcast as well. So we want to see the guys look good on the field. They're going to look good before they look good on the field, depending on your preference in style. In the merchandise and in the store. So the alternate jerseys for 2017 are out. I've looked them over even before I knew I was going to have you on. And my boy in particular can pick out uniforms across the sports landscape. He's just one of those guys that loves the fashion part of it, as a lot of kids do these days. So your thoughts once you get to see the alt jerseys?
I love them. Honestly, I'm a proponent for alternate jerseys. And it adds some variety. Like, I get that Mark Richt wants, on the road, white over orange, and at home, orange over white. I get that. And that's going to be the standard combination. But variety is a spice of life. So getting a couple alternates, I think it's pretty cool. And I'm a traditionalist. I'm from Detroit. I love the Detroit Red Wings jerseys that are white and red, or red and white, depending if it's home or away. The Detroit Tigers jerseys are classic. I'm a traditionalist that way. But in this, I think it's cool to have at least something slightly different from time to time. It's something that people want to talk about. And when I wrote about it yesterday, and I mean, this is going to sound braggadocious, and it kind of is, but my piece on SB Nation, the college network of the, SB Nation college sites, my piece on the new Miami Hurricanes alternates was the single most clicked piece out of any piece on any SB Nation college site yesterday. Had like 29,000 clicks, which is like monumental for the summer because we're in the middle of August and there's nothing going on. So you don't get those kind of numbers unless it's like, an injury news or something like that. And it was massive. It was 3.5 times the clicks that any other piece got. So a lot of people are saying, oh, I don't care about jerseys. I don't care about jerseys. You're lying because you're clicking on it, and I love it. And please keep clicking on our site to do those kind of things. But I was really fired up. I think that the green was a great design. They changed the shoulder stripes from the previous green jerseys a little bit. And those are green over green jerseys. And people were saying, oh, that's not Miami. But then somebody hit my Twitter with 3 different Nike jerseys that were previously green over green combos. So that's a traditional kind of a thing if you really want to look at the history of Miami Hurricanes football. It's not every game, but I like having that in the rotation. And then the all black is it's just sexy. It's not matte black, but it's because the Miami Equipment Room answered that and said it looked matte black because it has a non-shiny finish. But yeah, it's basically, if you're thinking about the coloring, it's like a matte black finish with the normal U, the orange and green on the side, black tops, black gloves, black pants, black socks, black cleats with orange laces. It's just sexy. It is awesome. And that's going to be, both of those are going to be one-off offerings as alternate jerseys. So out of the 12 regular season games, 10 regular season games are going to be your traditional orange over white or white over orange jersey. On September 23rd against Toledo, we're going to wear the all green jerseys, and that's going to have the normal white helmet. So that's on September 23rd against Toledo. And then Thursday night for the one Thursday game we have against Georgia Tech, October the 12th, that's when we're going with the all-black Merc Squad jerseys. And that's also going to be the night that they're going to do the new round of inductions into the Miami Hurricanes Ring of Honor, which was just announced today. And those are 5 people that are joining this prestigious club, which is Warren Sapp, Ed Reed, Ray Lewis, Sean Taylor. Oh, phooey. I forget the 5th one, but it's somebody else. And this is going to be really bad because I'm going to have to go on this website and I'm going to click over here and I'm going to look it up. And I should know all 5 off the top of my head. Here we go. Click. This is making for really bad podcasting. But hey, sometimes mistakes happen. Okay, so your 5 are Ed Reed, Sean Taylor, the late Sean Taylor, Warren Sapp, Michael Irvin, and Ray Lewis. All 5 of those
Michael
guys.
Irvin. Michael
You
Irvin.
know, I did it when I was writing the piece too. It just kind of happens sometimes. So apologies to the playmaker, but he's going to be out there as well. So those 5 guys going into the Ring of Honor on October the 12th, which is the same night that we're wearing the Miami Knights all black jerseys, is what they're calling them. So that'll be a good time. And yeah, it's 2 games out of the year. Now, if Miami makes it to the ACC championship game, which many, including myself, are projecting and very hopeful for, and then a premium bowl game, it could come to pass where Miami wears one of the alternates. But with Mark Richt being such a traditionalist like myself, where he wants just his normal combos, even with postseason play, and I'm fully expecting both of those things to happen, an ACC championship game and a major bowl game, I think for those games you would probably see the normal standard classic combos of orange over white or white over orange, but with a green alternate and a black alternate in the rotation now. I could see, maybe not this year, but in the future for a big game like that, using one of those alternate jerseys. But overall, I love the designs. I really, really, really am happy with what Adidas has done, both on the fanwear side and on the, the Canes gear side. My big thing was the footwear, because I just personally like Nike shoes and cleats, and having talked to people who played, that's kind of a preference. But, I think that Adidas has made strides in that area of actual, not casual wear, because the casual wear for Adidas is awesome now. I'm talking Ultra Boost, NMDs, Yeezys, all those things are great. But I'm talking about game wear, things that you wear on the court or on the field. Those kind of things I was skeptical of when Miami signed with Adidas, but they're doing a great job, and I think that these alternate jerseys is just another iteration of that, and they continue to put Miami to the forefront of their marketing, making Miami the flagship school for Adidas, which is what they said they were going to do when we signed with them. And we're a national brand, and they are positioning us as such, and they're giving us, I think, some of the best designs and best gear that Adidas is coming up with in the past few years. So, yeah, I really love them, and I think that you guys will too.
I'm all for the black. Yeah, you could probably tell if you would take inventory of most of our podcasts here that I have about 17 different versions of black shirts in my wardrobe. I just don't think you can really go wrong with a good looking black, and everything you just described, and basically what I'm looking at on my laptop, the black will be tremendous. I'm looking at a picture here with a black jersey, and then there's an aqua jersey that almost looks like a Miami Dolphins jersey. That's exactly what it looks like. So I don't know if you've seen, or I'm just not looking at a good picture, but that doesn't look like a good look to me.
Well, I think that in the Adidas release video, they had on, so you had some of the lens flare, and that did make the green look, I mean, because this is a Miami hoodie, but it's like not Miami green. It's not that forest green. This is like a more Kelly green. And I think that with the lens flare, you got a little bit of that. But trust, if you look like I put it up on the website, stateofu.com, if you look for the jersey piece, if you go on Adidas website, they have things where you can search that up, or just, Google, new Miami Hurricanes jerseys. It's definitely a traditional forest green kind of a look. So I don't know exactly what you're looking at, but maybe it could be because of the lens flare, but the colors are traditional. I mean, with the exception of black, which is an alternate non, Hurricanes color, because our colors, orange and white and green signifying the orange blossom or the orange tree, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, all those things. But black being a separate kind of a thing. But yeah, really looking forward to that. And I saw a couple people, including Bomani Jones, bring up the fact that Georgia wore all black alternates in 2008 against Florida, I believe it was, but didn't know that they were going to their own funeral at that time. So hopefully when Miami wears it in October, we have a better result than Georgia did the last time they wore their black alternate, or one of those times they wore their black alternates in Mark Richt's tenure.
Well, you made a better selection of games to wear the alternate. For that reason, and also for the reason that I don't want to see Miami show up for the Florida State game with alt jerseys and uniforms on. I want to see the traditional, when I flip on Miami, Florida State, I want to see that look that I've grown accustomed to seeing with those two schools on the field. So I was glad to hear Toledo, okay, maybe your best non-conference game, a decent opponent, so it's not a throwaway game, but it's somebody that you're going to be heavily favored against. Okay, that's one of the selections. Then Georgia Tech, certainly division rival, decent game, decent matchup, but not a prime game. And so I just wanted to stay away from Miami, Florida State. So that was going to be the next question, but you clarified that, so I'm feeling better about the alt uniforms now.
Yeah, and additionally to that, since they're colored jerseys, you're going to wear them at home, with the exception of, LSU for night games petitions the other team to wear white, and it's a tradition thing that they want to do, but it's really on the away team. If the away team says, okay, we'll allow you to wear the white jersey and everything. So yeah, we weren't going to wear them anywhere but at home. And then the black, obviously we needed to have a night game for that, because in South Florida, RIP to your team if you're going to wear all black jerseys with black helmets, at a noon kickoff game, because that's just not wise. So yeah, it makes sense. Your second home game of the year, you're wearing them against Toledo, and then the fifth or sixth, it's like the fourth home game of the year, Thursday night special night game, ESPN presentation, you're going to wear the all black. And I said this when the schedule was released, but it's still crazy to me that we have a home Thursday night game, because I remember ESPN years ago said they were going to stop giving the Miami Hurricanes home Thursday night games because there's so much to do in South Florida that it's lightly populated into maybe halftime. And also the Miami Hurricanes were kind of bad then, so people were not making their way off of their jobs to come up to the stadium and things like that. But maybe that's a vote of confidence in Mark Richt and things like that to give us a home game for that Thursday. But that decision by ESPN was advantageous because that allows us, to wear the black jerseys at home.
Okay, I'm going to switch this from Wi-Fi to I'm going to hardwire. Mark Rogers, TV talking Miami football, and the best way to do it is bring on Cam Underwood from State of the U. Cam's been joining us for a number of years, and join him for the best in Miami football coverage for college football right here. It's YouTube, Mark Rogers TV. It's the audio versions at Stitcher, Podbean, and iTunes. All right, Miami, number 18 in the coaches poll. We're going to assume that they win the first couple of weeks, that Florida State's game's going to be huge, and then forget the preseason rankings. Of course, they're going to be meaningless at some point. They do give us an idea of what the coaches or the coaches' assistants, the sports information directors, or maybe some intern in the sports information director office feels about those particular teams. But your thoughts about the 18 ranking to start the season?
I think that the 18 ranking is pretty fair, honestly. When you look at the teams immediately above Miami in the rankings, 17 is Louisville, 16 is Florida, 15 is Georgia, 14 is Stanford. I think that that's comparable. And then Miami's right in front of K-State, West Virginia, who we blew out in the bowl game, and then South Florida down at 21 and Virginia Tech at 22, but Virginia Tech is replacing a lot more guys than Miami is, so it makes sense that even as a division champion from last year, Virginia Tech slides back a little bit. So I think that this is a good spot for Miami to be ranked. Obviously, if we had a steady quarterback situation, i.e. if Brad Kyle were returning, I think that ranking would be higher, maybe in the top 15 range, somewhere in there. But yeah, this is a team that has, a top 2 or 3 defensive line in the country, a top, maybe I think the best front 7 in America. Explosive playmakers all over the field and returning guys like Amon Richards and Chris Herndon and freshmen like Mike Harley and Jeff Thomas. Also cannot go without mentioning Mark Walton, the best returning running back in the ACC, and he's going to be a top probably 10 national running back this year. So there's plenty of offensive firepower, plenty of solid play on the defensive side. There's talent in the defensive secondary, even if they might be unproven at this level, when you have guys coming from backup or rotation jobs to starters like a Sheldrick Redwine and Jaquan Johnson, and then infusing some transfers like a D. Delaney from the Citadel, 2-time FCS All-American, and Javonte Dean from JUCO at Blinn College out in Texas, which is where Cam Newton went to his JUCO year. And then guys like Malik Young in the secondary as well, Trajan Bandy, Michael Jackson, who's a rotation player in the secondary as well. So there's a lot of things to like for this team. And I think that there is, obviously, with a schedule that's not really that challenging overall, I think there's room for upward mobility from this 18 ranking. But as we're, looking over the landscape of college football right now, today, in the middle of August or middle of August, I think Miami at 18 is a good spot. And then if we are really looking to do better, which we are, and be ranked higher, which we are, then we're going to have plenty of opportunities on the field this year to win those games and then elevate that ranking.
So for all but one of the first 7 or 8 games of the year, Miami's going to be a substantial favorite. Of course, so we're talking about the Florida State game in game number 3. So again, the ranking is going to be determined by week to week by the wins and losses. But you got to think that a game at Tallahassee against what could be the number 1 team in the country at that point, if they knock off Alabama, and certainly unless they get blown out against the Crimson Tide, going to be a top 5 team, that Miami's going to, even if they play within a touchdown of Florida State, as they have the last couple of years, they maintain a top 15 to 20 ranking. A blowout's going to send them off the top 25 radar, and a win, of course, is going to catapult them into a national championship race at that point. So let's segue to the season. The 2017 campaign's underway here in about 3 weeks. An interesting date, Cam, to get us started here after the Bethune-Cookman opener is going to Arkansas State. So I don't know if you know the details behind the agreement that was made there and why the choice was made for a top program to make the trip to Arkansas State.
Yeah, this is the return game from the back end of a home and home, if you will. So Arkansas State came to Miami in 2014. That was Brad Kaya's freshman year. If you look it up, on Giphy or on Twitter or anything, this is the time that they did the fainting goat for a fake punt. If you remember, they had a guy in the slot who was actually on the line, so he couldn't go down the field. So he just literally crossed his arms over his chest and fell back. It was hilarious. And then the up back who threw that pass through interception. So, it didn't really work. But, yeah, this is the back end of a home and home, and we did not buy our way out of it, or Miami did not buy their way out of it, and are going to Jonesboro, Arkansas for week 2. And it's, it's just like last year when Miami went to Appalachian State in Boone, North Carolina, rolled in as the biggest, baddest team that's ever come in there, blew them out and got our win and then moved on. And basically, that's what we're going to do to Arkansas State. It's, it's just a game that's on the schedule. We're not afraid to play anybody anywhere, unlike some other teams like, the University of Florida, who's playing their first out-of-state, out-of-conference game out of state in like 30-something years. I think they've only done it one other time in my lifetime. The Miami Hurricanes, we're not scared to go anywhere. We went to we've gone to Louisville when they were not a conference game. We went to K-State. We've gone other places. So, look, it's the back end of a home and home. It was a fine agreement there. Arkansas State is probably going to be their division or their conference's champion. So this is not necessarily even a pushover game. This is a good non-conference team that we can go up against there, which is going to be a little challenging because it's going to be, second game of the year, first game on the road. We're going to have all those kind of things. They're going to be rabid fans. It's going to be loud out there. They're going to be hyped for this game because, again, Miami's coming to town. This is the show. This is like, you've seen these old school movies when the circus comes to town and everybody from all around stops what they're doing and they converge on this little city because this gigantic show is now here. This is what Miami is when compared to Arkansas State. So I'm not worried or concerned. Obviously, respect all opponents and fear none. But it's just happens to be the back end of a home and home. We're going to go up there, we're going to whoop their ass, and we're going to move on.
Those Arkansas State and Toledo games are good ones to have because many college football fans focus on the big teams and the big games and the marquee programs, and we know that's where the dollars and the eyeballs are. As you mentioned right there, Arkansas State, they have played extremely well. It slips my mind exactly what they did last year, but prior to that, they had 5 consecutive Sun Belt championships there. The Toledo game, the Rockets have been extremely competitive in the MAC and a very formidable football team that went to Arkansas in 2015 and pulled off an upset against a pretty formidable SEC team that went on to win a bowl game. So those are not give-me type games. Yes, Miami's much more talented, much more dynamic, and as you point out, I would expect a 3-touchdown win, but they're not just going to roll over these teams, and they're good opponents to take on early in the season.
Yeah, and I just looked it up real quick. Arkansas State went 8-5 last year and beat Central Florida 31-13 in their bowl game. So, it's they have a nice coach, Blake Anderson, who's been rumored for a couple bigger jobs and things like that. So, having those kind of games is a good test for this team. Obviously, I think that we're going to win them. Arkansas State and Toledo as well. And, when you have a Notre Dame on Veterans Day, November the 11th, that's a big game in the non-conference. And then you add that obviously with the Bethune-Cookman bye game blowout to start the season. Those are, you got 2 solid group of 5 teams in Toledo and Arkansas State who could realistically both be their conference's champions. You have Notre Dame, who is not going to be as bad as last year, even though that bad Notre Dame team beat us last year, which I still cannot get over because it was a terrible, terrible team and such a wasted weekend that I took. But, I went up to Notre Dame with my friends, so I got to have that experience and things like that. I've told a couple of those stories on the Twitter timeline if you follow me there. But, yeah, I think that, the non-conference schedule is not overwhelming, but it's definitely manageable. So you're definitely looking at 4-0 or 3-1 at the worst in the non-conference. You start with Florida State in conference on the 3rd week, September 16th. That obviously is the biggest game on our schedule every year. It just happens to be that. Regardless of what they do in the first week, it's funny because a lot of Florida State fans on social media are talking about the Florida State-Miami game and not, Florida State, Alabama, and I wonder why that is. But, hey, regardless of what happens, they're going to bring their best effort. And that was exactly what we saw last year. They had a couple losses already on their schedule, on their record last year, and then they came down here. And to steal the SEC's motto, Miami, Florida State just means more. These guys know each other for years. They played with and against each other in high school. You got bragging rights in the families, friends, neighborhoods. Like, I mean, there's plenty of guys from around. We have Bradley Jennings Jr., whose father is from Carroll City, which is the Miami area, but he went to Florida State. The father did and played there. So the father went to Florida State and the son now goes to Miami. So you're talking like in the same household. You got all kinds of rivalry there. And regardless of what happens before that game for either team, that's going to be the game where both teams try the hardest. They bring their best. You just got extra. And if you can't see that as a fan or somebody watching this game, I don't know what to tell you, because it's easy to see. And when, watching either team, because I usually do try to watch Florida State or part of their games in the weeks leading up to when we play them. And you could easily see on the field, it's demonstrably different for both sides, Miami and Florida State, that game. So, that's a game that we're obviously going to go all out in. It's been 7 years since we beat them. The last time was in 2009 at Florida State with a young quarterback named Ja'Cory Harris. So maybe there can be a similarity with a young quarterback this year. And I'm just going to say young as in has not played a lot. I'm not going to put anybody's name by that, even if you've been watching these videos and you know who I hope the starting quarterback is going to be. So that's just going to be a huge game. Outside of that, and you were mentioning the lines and the favoring and things like that. Miami's going to be favored in 11 of 12 games this year. And it might be close in some of those other ones, but every game except for Florida State, as it stands right now on the ESPN FPI, there was another one from like Bovada had some lines that came out. And then I want to say Bill Connolly's S&P Plus from Football Outsiders. All of those have Miami favored in 11 to 12 games. So that means that we have the ability, if Miami does what they need to do, to have a very successful season. I've already predicted 10-2 in the regular season. You can pick whichever 2 wins or losses you think that is. I'm not going to fight you on whichever ones you think that might be. If you want to say, hey, we're going to lose at Arkansas State, Toledo, and win the rest of them, hey, cool, do you. I'm just saying that there's going to be 10 up and 2 down. That's what I predict from right now. And I stand by that. I think that this is a very manageable schedule. We're going to have more talent on the field against every single team than Florida State, and the gap between Miami's roster of talent and Florida State's is not as big a gulf as it once was. And I think that the adrenaline of that game can overcome some of that. Also, plus the fact our defensive line is our strength, and their offensive line is one of their weaknesses. So that's a great matchup right there. And I know that I've probably stolen the thunder of somebody who's going to write the matchup of the week later on in this season as we lead up to the Florida State game from our website. But there's things that you can like about every single game. And like I said, we're already favored. Miami is in 11 of 12. So the schedule is really not as difficult as it was last year when you had that murderer's row 5 games in October when Miami went 1-4. Miami has 5 games in September. Bethune, win. Arkansas State, win. Florida State, toss-up. Toledo, win. And Duke on a Friday, which should be a win because Duke is not good. Other than that, after the bye week in early October, Georgia Tech on a Thursday, that should be a win. Syracuse the next Saturday, that should be a win. At North Carolina, rebuilding and completely retooling, that should be a win. Virginia Tech at home, that should be a win. Notre Dame has talent, so I'll call that a toss-up. Virginia, that should be a win on November 18th. And then at Pittsburgh, that should be a win. So, I mean, it's not a real murderer's row kind of schedule. And as long as Miami finds their groove, gets some solid quarterback play, and the athletes play to the level that they have, and not resting on laurels either, because everybody's talking about the defense being great. And Manny Diaz, the defensive coordinator, the other day said, hey, wait, we did really well last year. I'm not going to say we weren't good then. We haven't done anything this year. We haven't tackled anybody. We're losing guys, Rayshawn Jenkins, Jamal Carter, Corn Elder from that secondary who made all kinds of tackles. If we missed 2 of those tackles those guys made every game last year, you're talking way more losses. So, I mean, we need these guys to do their job. Everybody has to do their job and has to have that chip on their shoulder of not being comfortable with 5 wins and a bowl game win to end last season, but take that and really refocus us. to that level of focus that Brad Kaya spoke about after the Russell Athletic Bowl, when he said, we took this game like it was our national championship. We put in every ounce of preparation and focus and dedication, and you saw that on the field. That's what I want to see from this team, and we have the schedule to be able to do it. And if they do that, then we're going to really be successful. So that's what I'm really looking for Miami this year.
Shameless plug on my scheduling series. So I have looked at every Power 5 schedule. So that's all the Power 5 conferences plus the major independents, one of which Miami plays in Notre Dame. So this is what stands out to me about the Miami schedule, which I rank as the 11th most difficult in the ACC. So if you do the math, that would be the fourth easiest in the ACC. So we know they play in the Coastal. We know what the Coastal is. Miami is the best talent. They've not proven to be the best team yet. And we know that there's a collection of teams that are very similar in terms of talent and most likely ability this year and performance. Pitt, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, etc. They're good teams. They're decent teams. They will be a challenge, but they're not great teams. So who do you play in the other division is always my question, especially in the SEC and the ACC, because you only play 2 of the other 7. So there are large discrepancies in schedule difficulty. And as you well know, Cam, you get from a rivalry standpoint and from a viewership standpoint, this is a great thing. But from the standpoint of having to play a difficult schedule, it's tough on Miami because they always play Florida State. So that's the crossover rivalry. Nobody else gets that. Georgia Tech gets Clemson every year. So who's the other game? A couple years ago, of course, before Al Golden was shown the door, it was Florida State and Clemson, both of them. And that makes it really tough. Louisville a couple years ago. So this year it's Syracuse is the other one. So it's lighter than it could be with a Clemson, North Carolina State, or Louisville. And then you mentioned the out-of-conference games, and Notre Dame kind of highlights that. But the game at home this year, and what I've been really impressed with Power 5 scheduling this year that I have yet to see maybe in my lifetime is that teams are bulking up. So if you looked at Power 5 schedules out of conference just a couple years ago, most schools were scheduling one difficult game against a Power 5, and the other 3 were cream puffs or an FCS in there. You saw a handful of schools, Baylor being the most prominent. I would get on them every year for not scheduling anybody. Now you're seeing 3/4 of those 68 teams in Power 5 play scheduling 2. So Miami doesn't have that this year. They just have the Notre Dame game, although Arkansas State and Toledo are formidable, and one of those games is on the road. So it's a decent schedule. The ACC might be the toughest conference in college football, but Miami plays in the lesser of the 2 divisions.
Yeah, and I agree with all that, analysis you just said. But, I think that there will be years where we have 2 Power 5 non-conference games in the future. Miami does in the future. But for the 2017 season, it would not surprise me again if Arkansas State and Toledo both won their conferences championships. So it's definitely not as bad as a Baylor who plays nobody and then complained about not getting into the playoff a couple years ago. They played you and me and 9 other dudes, just grabbing a helmet and a shoulder pad set for the first time in forever. They didn't test themselves. So, there are some interesting scheme dynamics that are going on because obviously Arkansas State plays up-tempo spread, so you're going to see that a little bit later in the year. If you have that air raid spread from Toledo, because they throw the ball all over the place. Their quarterback had 4,800 yards or 4,300 yards passing last year. That'll prepare us for a Syracuse game. So I think that there's a scheme fit there where you're looking at one thing at a group of 5 level, and because Toledo could beat Syracuse, or that would be a close game. So I'm not saying it's a really low level to high level, but you're looking at a couple of things to prepare you for what you're going to see from a conference game later. So, yeah, and, the other thing with the schedule is we have the marquee non-conference game this year with Notre Dame. But going into the future, Miami has some of those elite games in the national college football landscape as non-conference games. 2018 season kickoff in Jerry World in Arlington, Texas against LSU. 2019 season kickoff in Orlando against Florida because they finally stopped being punks and running away from us because they had only beat us one time in 34 years. After that, you got Michigan State home and home in 2020 and 21. After that, you got Texas A&M 22 and 23. And then you're back on the Notre Dame cycle 24 and 25. So the better part of a decade, you have one elite game a year against a non-conference powerhouse program. And I mean, yeah, Michigan State was down last year, but we scheduled that game 2 years ago when they were going to the Big Ten championship game. You know, Texas A&M, they've been kind of middling, but that's still a powerhouse team, and that's the team that Miami's played previously in college football history as well. So if you're looking, I mean, yeah, okay, you got the one game, and people will say, oh, we've seen Notre Dame before. We played them, 3 times in the last 8 years. That's too much. Again, I just gave you from 2018 to 2025 who Miami has as their lead non-conference game. All you need is now another Power 5 or, FBS level team, which, again, Toledo is a good team who can win their conference. Arkansas State is another good team who could win their conference for the 4th time in 5 years, I want to say. Miami's doing well with the schedule, so it's not the toughest as it could be this year, obviously, because we get Syracuse as opposed to NC State, who we blew out last year, and Clemson, who blew us out 2 years ago, as the other crossover from the Atlantic Division. But, I get frustrated when people say that Miami's playing only the Sisters of the Poor as though we have a Baylor kind of schedule, when that just is not the truth. And when Miami starts winning, which should happen this year because we have better talent than these other teams in the Coastal Division, then who cares? Because these are the teams in your conference, which is the best, if not the second best conference in all of college football. And when you're winning games, everybody's happy. It's like when you're putting up jump shots. Your arm's not tired if the ball's going in. So I'm ready for that ball to go through that hoop, so we can get out here and win some games and have a good schedule.
Well, Cam, I'll clarify, and I think you understand that I follow the sport pretty heavily, so I'm making an overgeneralization when I say, okay, Power 5 game is difficult, a non-Power 5 game is automatically difficult. The two programs that you're facing this year, as you mentioned, Toledo and Arkansas State, we could go to every conference in the Power 5 and we could select 2 to 3 teams that there's almost no question that Arkansas State and Toledo specifically are better than. So that's an overgeneralization that I'm making. Okay, Miami's only playing one Power 5. Other schools are playing 2 Power 5s because you're playing 2 other teams on your schedule that would beat 2 to 3 teams in all the Power 5 conferences each. So they're pretty good football teams.
Right. And I mean, we can do the 2 Power 5 thing. Cool. Can I get Rutgers on the phone? UConn, how are you doing? Illinois, like Purdue right now, who's still rebuilding. Like, we can do that. Well, no, Vanderbilt actually beat some, but still, we'll blow Vanderbilt out. I mean, we can go and do that. But I mean, I know it's an overgeneralization, but I was just responding to some things that I've seen and heard from the Miami Hurricanes fan base, which is why I kind of went on that tangent.
All right, Cam Underwood, State of the U. We track him down from Miami Conversation as much as possible. Please join him there. And, of course, you can follow us at YouTube for our videos and on Podbean, iTunes, and Stitcher for the audio. Cam, it's always a great discussion. We appreciate the time, man.
No problem. Always good to be with you guys. So be sure you check us out on stateoftheu.com. See you next time.